Hello everyone and welcome to The Vortex, where lies and falsehoods are trapped and exposed. I'm Michael Voris. Last week we sent out an email blast calling for a Catholic revolution in response to the election, and we were ecstatic with the replies. We still are. Hundreds of people fired back that they're fed up, ticked off, mad as you know what, and we're looking to be mobilized. In this, they totally agree with the gist of our email. It's entirely appropriate to speak in militaristic terms because that is what we are, an army dedicated to helping bring about the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And by we, I mean the church. And do we use violence to bring this about? Yes, but not as the world understands violence. Just as the world does not understand true peace, it also does not understand true violence. True peace is not merely the absence of armed conflict, a break or cessation of wars. It is a life lived in truth and beauty and love. This is why we pray that our dearly departed rest in peace. Likewise, the way the world has misunderstood peace, it has misunderstood violence. Violence is what must happen in order for the kingdom of heaven to be established on earth. Jesus Christ even says so. The most significant act of violence has already occurred 2,000 years ago on a hill outside of Jerusalem on a cross. The crucifixion was a violent act, but I'm not talking about the physical aspect of the crucifixion. I'm talking about the violence our blessed Lord did to his own will. Recall the night before he willed to be on the cross, he begged his Father 3 times to not have to undergo the horror awaiting him. That struggle is necessarily called the agony in the garden. And what was agonizing for our blessed Lord was the overcoming of his human will and the terror which filled it. One could easily conjecture that more violence occurred in the garden than on the cross, but that's a matter for theologians to wrestle with. For us, it points the way to what any true, authentic Catholic revolution necessarily entails: violence, personal violence committed against ourselves and perpetrated on our own wills. There are many reasons to suspect that stepped-up persecution is what's in the cards for the church in the West. And as a sidebar, don't think this is impossible. The church is already being persecuted in Asia and the Middle East and parts of Africa. Shift a few rules around here and there, jiggle a law this way or that, get a judge or two to develop a novel interpretation or two, and voila, you have the ingredients for a persecution. If you don't believe me, just ask 50 million plus babies if you need the proof. So, what should the authentic Catholic response be to persecution? Ultimately, a willing embrace of martyrdom. But no one accepts martyrdom just out of the blue. As St. Paul points out, people don't just readily give up their lives even for a friend. So, how do we adopt a mindset where we are willing to die, either physically or figuratively, for Christ? One necessary ingredient, it seems, would be knowledge. We must know Christ. Notice I say know Christ, not know about him, but know him. How do we best come to know him? Through his holy Catholic Church. This is why there is such a war within the church these days, because people are seeking to reshape that church so they can reshape Christ. This war within the church has spilled over into the world. In fact, there is a reciprocal effect. The more war rocks the church, the more violent the world becomes toward Christ. And the more the world rejects Christ, the more pitched the battle becomes within the church. This is why we must class this struggle in terms of revolution, because as long as we breathe, we are at war, spiritual war, and we are commanded to fight. A few years ago, a man who seems to have been most prophetically gifted expressed the idea thusly. He said, "We are now standing in the face of the greatest historical confrontation humanity has gone through. I do not think that wide circles of the American society or wide circles of the Christian community realize this fully. We are now facing the final confrontation between the church and the anti-church, of the gospel and the anti-gospel. This confrontation lies within the plans of divine providence. It is a trial which the whole church must take up. Shortly after making that observation, the Holy Trinity elevated him to the throne of St. Peter, and he took the name of John Paul II. Let's continue the revolution. I'm Michael Voris.